Medical disclaimer. The content of this video is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and always get proper treatment for serious medical conditions. Legal disclaimer. Use only legal measures to combat the virus and cooperate with government officials, first responders and healthcare workers to make the coronavirus a thing of the past and create a perfect society ASAP. Use common sense, logic and help your fellow humans if necessary, also to lower the risk of being vaccinated mandatorily ourselves and to end the pandemic as soon as possible. The objective of my videos is not to slander people nor to incite or trigger people, but to do the opposite, exposing it when people are wrongly accused and to create universal peace, world peace or just peace on earth. People are innocent till proven guilty in the court of law. One who knows of evidence must testify, not to convict anyone without a fair trial. Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Genuine News. I'm Ulrich Hoffman and this is the broadcast. Side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, etc. Adverse reactions. So here I want to start with the fact that I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm not a qualified medical doctor, physician, doctor. And any decisions people make based on this broadcast are for their own responsibility, and so what they choose to do and not to do is their own responsibility, basically, to keep it clear. And that's why I also start with the disclaimer. I keep clear we must observe these WHO guidelines. There are 4 other effective measures people can take. And that's my opinion based on science. The scientific study concerning colloidal silver, air ionizers, shielding, and essential oils that have antiviral properties, which it's scientifically proven that they have these antiviral properties. Okay, so the side effects of the top COVID-19 vaccines in the US. Moderna, chills, fevers, headache, shortness of breath, pain in the arm. So don't in the army. Military is another joke that I used to make. So you could argue this should be done by doctors and not by military. Anyway, Pfizer, fever, fatigue, chills, redness and swelling. Others argue it should not be done at all. Some people, also doctors and professors, are anti-vaccination. And some of them are controlled positions, so they're not really anti-vaxxers. I'm a real anti-vaxxer. I'm 100% anti-vaccination, and I can explain why. And I've done that in another broadcast, why I am an anti-vaxxer. I think that's also on this channel or on Perfect Society. The link is in the description. AstraZeneca, neurological disorder. Only one. Johnson & Johnson, unexplained illness. So this is from one of the articles that I plan to cover, or at least touch upon in this broadcast. So let's begin with the browser, the articles that I've selected for you all for this broadcast. I have to, okay. I didn't use studio mode, otherwise I could have done it better. So here we read on defense.gov. For guidance specific to DoDEA schools, please go to the DoDEA COVID-19 page. Some people call this the adrenocoronavirus. They think it could be a designer virus. Also many US senators think this. And it could be designed to only kill people older than 18. A bioweapon. Also according to the RATG13 study that I've covered. School operations in COVID-19, and there's a .ea.edu website. So I've added the link in the description. HBCon status, alpha, limited community transmission beginning. School facilities are open, mitigation strategies are in effect, students and staff on campus. Bravo, moderate status. Increased community transmission, school facilities are open, heightened mitigation. Charlie, substantial, sustained community transmission. School facilities closed to students, schools transition to remote learning. And of course, the advantages and disadvantages of that have to be studied as well. Regional Health Command Europe and DoDEA Europe work to keep children safe. I was just studying this as part of some intelligence thing. Let's see if I can find that fast. No, I haven't prepared it yet. Maybe I can check it later. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine induced adverse reactions in quote more than half quote of trial participants. This was July 15, 2020 on justthenews.com. 1/5 of participants in one test group reported quote one or more severe adverse events, adverse reactions, side effects. On observer.com, here are all the side effects of every top COVID-19 vaccine in the US. I plan to read this article completely. This is for Dutch people, covid19.sdu.nl. No mask obligation on medical grounds, but there are possibilities on regional level to improve behavior, basically. That's how I translate it fast. Not gonna cover that, it's in Dutch. This is my channel. Check it out for other more important videos about this stuff. Genuine News on YouTube. And please subscribe. I need more subscribers and viewers to have more influence on this timeline, to create a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally. Okay. All of you has to be vaccinated in 24 hours. Long-term safety never tested. Ingredients not listed. That's another broadcast I did about this, but now I have some more information, so I'm doing a broadcast specifically about the side effects of the vaccines. Dr. John Campbell uploaded updates. Well, he's not Dr. Vernon Coleman, that's clear. Dr. Vernon Coleman. Check him out on YouTube. I've covered this article, and that shows this illustration with the systemic and local adverse events from the mRNA A1273 vaccine by Moderna. But I don't know what the dosage of the vaccines is. However, at 250 micrograms, 100% had pain, and that's listed here as a moderate side effect or adverse reaction. In the orange are severe adverse reactions. Also at 100 milligram, any local symptom is severe, and size of erythema or redness. But these are all for 250 micrograms. So let's move on. What are the side effects of the Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccines? Fatigue and aches most common in phase 3 studies. 10news.com. Of course, they've never tested the long-term effects, long-term safety or long-term unsafety of these vaccines. They're new and they're using a relatively new technique or technology, the mRNA vaccines. I will also check the wiki article. This is on com2.com. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2 to 3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. This looks like a more alternative website, and I don't know if this is all truthful and accurate. However, I can study it and then see what I think about it. I haven't read this yet, so I don't know if it's any good. Yahoo News, what are the side effects of Pfizer's, Moderna's vaccines? Your questions answered. November 17, 2020. And this was July 17, 2020. So that was earlier on in the trials, perhaps, or something. Okay, so then I wanted to start with the all side effects article of theobserver.com. 10/2020. Updated as of November 16, 2020. Okay, let's see if we can get the text-to-speech engine to work. Check. Okay. Well, I've adjusted my microphone a little bit, so now it should all be better. I have a better microphone that I hope to connect soon.
Here are all the side effects of every top COVID-19 vaccine in US by Sdu October 20, 2020, 7:30 a.m. Heather Lieberman, L., 28, receives a COVID-19 vaccination from Miguel de la Cruz at the Research Centers of America in Hollywood, Florida, on August 13, 2020. Chandankana, AFP via Getty Images. Everyone is anxiously waiting for a COVID-19 vaccine. But as the world's most cutting-edge drug makers race towards the finish line, things have gotten complicated. In the US, there are 4 companies that are in the final stage of testing their COVID-19 vaccines: Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. All of them have reported side effects in trial participants after giving the shots. 2 companies, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, have paused phase 3 human testing in the US after several volunteers fell so ill that it worried health regulators. Subscribe to Observer's daily newsletter. It's not uncommon for vaccines to induce adverse responses in healthy people. Most of them will still make it past the FDA as long as the discomfort is mild and temporary. Yet, it's something the public needs to know before taking any vaccine, especially one for a highly contagious virus like COVID-19. Which would require vast adoption to stem its spread. Moderna, chills, fevers, headache, shortness of breath, pain in the arm. Last month, Luke Hutchison, a 44-year-old volunteer in Moderna's phase 3 trial, said he'd had a mild fever after taking the first shot of Moderna's Moderna 1273 vaccine, and full-on COVID-like symptoms after the second shot. Received my booster shot for the Moderna vaccine stage 3 clinical trial, experienced mild fever after the first shot, but full-on COVID-like symptoms for 12 hours after the second shot, fever, chills, muscle and joint aches, really hot hands and feet, headache, general malaise, cough. Luke Hutchison, at LH, September 17, 2020. Another volunteer, Jack Morningstar, a college student from the university.
I think these are signs that it's damaging the body. Pain is basically a warning signal of our body that it's being damaged. So that could also indicate that in the long term there may be other problems with this. So I wonder, how long did they test this and on how many people?
of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, said he'd experienced fatigue after the first dose and a fever after the second. However, because the trial was double-blind, he wouldn't know if he got the real vaccine or just placebo until the vaccine cleared FDA authorization. 2 other participants in Moderna's study experienced similar side effects, according to CNBC, but they declined to go on the record. Hutchinson said he decided to go public about it because he was concerned that Moderna might not fully inform the public about its vaccine's potential side effects. Pfizer, fever, fatigue, chills, redness and swelling. Last Wednesday, Pfizer said in a report that some participants in the company's late-stage trials had experienced mild side effects after getting the first shot of the vaccine and that fewer participants reported side effects after taking the second shot. Systemic events, fatigue, headache, chills, muscle pain and joint pain, were reported.
So with Moderna, it seems to be the opposite, basically, that the second shot is causing most problems. This one. Here you can see vaccination 1, vaccination 2. And they've apparently tested 3 dosages, 25, 100 and 250 microgram. And especially 250 microgram is giving even severe adverse reactions after the second shot. And we can see that after the second shot, the problems are bigger with the Moderna vaccine or injection.
In small numbers of younger recipients of the second shot, Pfizer said in a report published in the New England Journal of Medicine. But no severe systemic events were reported by older recipients of this vaccine candidate. 2 trial participants said they experienced slight flu symptoms immediately after each of the 2 shots in August. A few volunteers in the younger group reported redness and swelling at the injection site. AstraZeneca, neurological disorder. At least 2 participants in AstraZeneca's phase 3 trial experienced transverse myelitis, an inflammatory syndrome that affects the spinal cord, after receiving the company's experimental COVID-19 vaccine. The British pharma company halted testing globally last month after the first case of transverse myelitis was reported. On September 11, AstraZeneca published a report saying there was insufficient evidence to say for certain that the illnesses were or were not related to the vaccine. The company has resumed phase 3 trials in the UK, Brazil, South Africa and India, but not yet in the US. Johnson & Johnson, the British pharma company halted testing globally last month after the first case of transverse myelitis was reported. On September 11, AstraZeneca published a report saying there was insufficient evidence to say for certain that the illnesses were or were not related to the vaccine. The company has resumed phase 3 trials in the UK, Brazil, South Africa and India, but not yet in the US. Johnson & Johnson, unexplained illness. Johnson & Johnson paused its phase 3 vaccine trial, Ensemble, last week after a volunteer experienced unexplained illness after receiving the shot. The company didn't disclose what the illness was due to privacy agreements with the participant. It's also unclear whether the sick participant was in the actual vaccine group or in the placebo group. The participant's illness is being reviewed and evaluated by the Ensemble Independent Data Safety Monitoring Board, DSMB, as well as our internal clinical and safety physicians, Johnson & Johnson said in a statement. Adverse events, illnesses, accidents, etc., even those that are serious, are an expected part of any clinical study, especially large studies. Wiki/RNA_vaccine. An RNA vaccine or mRNA, messenger RNA, vaccine is a new type of vaccine that transfers molecules of synthetic RNA into human cells. Once inside the cells, the RNA functions as mRNA, reprogramming the cells to make the foreign protein that would normally be produced by the pathogen, for example a virus, or by cancer cells. These protein molecules then stimulate an adaptive immune response that teaches the body to destroy any pathogen, or cancer cells, with the protein. 1. The mRNA molecule is coated with a drug delivery vehicle, usually PE-gylated lipid nanoparticles, to protect the fragile mRNA strands, and aid their absorption into the human cells.
Okay. And then the side effects and risks of the RNA, mRNA vaccines. From Wikipedia, the free site. Wikipedia, the free CIA Vatican edited encyclopedia.
Side effects and risks. Specific mRNA strands in the vaccine may elicit an unintended immune reaction. To minimize this, mRNA vaccine sequences are designed to mimic those produced by mammalian cell, that is human cells. For some RNA-based vaccine platforms induce potent interferon-type high responses, which have been associated not only with inflammation but also potentially with autoimmunity. Thus, identification of individuals at an increased risk of autoimmune reactions, e.g. lupus, before mRNA vaccination can allow precautions to be taken. 5. The risks associated with mRNA strands that did not manage to pass into a human cell are considered to be low, as the fragile mRNA molecule should be quickly broken down inside the body once its drug delivery system has eroded. 9. The drug delivery system holding the mRNA molecule, protecting the fragile mRNA strands from being broken down by the body before they enter the human cell, are usually PE-gylated lipid nanoparticles which can be reactogenic, triggering their own immune reactions, and causing damage to the liver at higher doses. 49. Strong reactogenic effects were reported in trials of novel COVID-19 RNA vaccines.
Okay, so that's from the Wiki RNA_vaccine article. Now I think we can hop to the Yahoo News article. Oh yeah, and another thing, be sure to check out my other broadcasts on genuine news. For example, this broadcast, how to make a super breathable pantyhose mask. It's right there on my channel, previous video that I made. And I've tested it out. I was allowed into the supermarket, treated like anyone else with a mask on. And I think it's even more breathable than my GVS Ellipse B3 filter mask. And I think the government should put out a warning not to run with masks on. Two boys died in China wearing masks. I'd say that, well, for you guys, it's easy. They're modifying my brainwave, you see. So I'm also practicing my speech capability when I'm not broadcasting. And they've also done attacks on my broadcast area when I lie on my left side. In my waterbed, they used to attack me. But lately it's getting better, so I hope that I'm not a targeted individual anymore. What else can be interesting? CDC proposes concentration camps in America, plans to invade homes and separate families. Live stream anti-lockdown protests London, multi-feed stream. All of US to be vaccinated in 24 hours, long-term safety never tested, ingredients not listed. Well, in the broadcast I show what is listed basically and what is not listed. So let's just read the Yahoo article first. What are the side effects? And then we can see the differences with the other articles. This is rather lengthy. That's how I like it.
What are the side effects of Pfizer's, Moderna's vaccines? Your questions answered November 17, 2020 middle. 13 minutes. Read. What are the side effects of Pfizer's, Moderna's vaccines? Your questions answered. What are the side effects of Pfizer's, Moderna's vaccines? Your questions answered. Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna both announced in November that their vaccine candidates against the novel coronavirus have shown promising results so far in phase 3 clinical trials. The two vaccines are among several that have been pre-ordered by the Canadian government. So how close are we to getting the vaccine? What needs to happen first? And what kind of vaccine is this anyway? CBC readers have also written to us with some of their own questions, such as what are the side effects of these vaccines? How long does the protection last? And when can Canadians expect to get access? Here are the answers. What did Moderna and Pfizer announce about their vaccine results? On November 18, Pfizer released updated results of its phase 3 clinical trials, suggesting the vaccine is 95% effective at preventing COVID-19, a little over a week after releasing interim results showing the vaccine may be 90% effective.
So isn't that 0 to 90% effective? And the other question is also important: how long do these vaccines stay effective? How long does the protection last? Right. What I suspect is that they don't want them to interfere with Bill Gates's gene drive extinction technology vaccine, the technology that 170 global groups, including scientists, want a moratorium on. And we can also read about the gene drive mosquitoes released in Brazil, in the streets of Brazil. David Bowie dancing in the streets. Well, that's not happening now, is it? Or, well, I don't know. Anyway, and the allegation that it created these microcephaly cases, children with shrunken heads, etc. Back then they called them GM mosquitoes. So they have already used this gene drive. More about it in my previous broadcasts. I continue reading. Perhaps I should keep my cam on so you can see my reaction to what is read out by the text-to-speech engine.
Moderna announced on November 16 that preliminary data from its ongoing phase 3 clinical trial shows the vaccine is 94.5% effective at preventing COVID-19 caused by the coronavirus. The analyses were both
up to 95% effective. Doesn't that mean from 0 to 95% effective? How should I interpret that?
Conducted by an independent data monitoring board. Pfizer's updated results looked at 170 infections, while Moderna's looked at 95 infections recorded so far during the trial to see which occurred among those who received the real shot versus those who received a dummy shot or placebo. With both vaccines, each participant gets 2 injections. Moderna said of the 95 infections, all but 5 were in participants who got the placebo. In addition, all 11 severe cases of COVID-19 were among those who had received the placebo. Pfizer said of 170 infections, more than the number required to meet the primary endpoint of the study, only 8 occurred in the group that got the vaccine, and only 1 was a severe case.
I think that it concerns 2 vaccines, and that's a reason for people to refuse it as well. So one vaccine is already in the arm, etc. and it's intramuscular, so it can be pretty painful. So these can be reasons for people to say, no, I'd rather wait. But I did that broadcast. They want to make this mandatory for everyone in the US, which I think is a crime that they may not make this mandatory. Also, children are practically not dying from COVID-19. And if you want to build up herd immunity to the mutated form of the virus, then I think it's not a good idea to use these injections on children as well. That's one point. And the second is that they've never tested the long-term effects of this vaccine. So that's another reason by itself. That's enough reason to say the government may not make this mandatory. So the cure can be worse than the disease. And that's a violation of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors have taken. So perhaps this is why they want to use the military to do this. It's a sort of military operation, warp speed, dark winter, etc. And some are convinced this is part of their population reduction agenda or agendas, the Rockefeller Lockstep Plan, Global 2000, and Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 of the UN rolled into one, basically.
What don't we know based on these results? Why might the final results be different? Moderna's results come partway through the study, and the initial protection rate might change by the time the study ends, the company said. Moderna's analysis looked for cases starting 2 weeks after the second dose of the vaccine. If the shots wear off quickly, the infection rate could go up among those who receive them. There are also still questions about how effective the vaccines are for older adults and those with chronic conditions, who are at highest risk from the disease. Pfizer did not say how many of the infections occurred in older adults, but it claimed the vaccine was 94% effective among those over 65. Dr. Zane Shagla, an infectious diseases specialist at St. Joseph's Healthcare in Hamilton, said the clinical trials included adults without major medical issues. They took people that didn't have dementia, didn't have chemotherapy, Shagla said on CBC News Network. As you start adding those parts in the real-world setting, you may run down some of the efficacy. Now, starting at 95% is pretty good.
I'm wondering if people that had chemotherapy, myself included 10 years ago, if they have monoclonal antibodies, basically Regeneron, and these treatments can be up to $15,000 per treatment, and it has to do with monoclonal antibodies. So that's my question to the doctors and professors out there. I could also Google it, so I think there may be other more important questions like, could it be an antibody-dependent virus, SARS-CoV-2?
Moderna said 15 of the infections so far occurred in older people, but did not say how many were in the vaccine group or the placebo group. It did say that preliminary analysis suggests a broadly consistent safety and efficacy profile across all evaluated subgroups. Vaccines are often less effective in older populations, which is why there are higher dose flu and shingles vaccines for seniors. Do the vaccines just stop symptoms or prevent infection? We don't know yet. So far, only people with symptoms have been tested in these trials, as that is the primary endpoint of the study, the first thing that they look for. That means it's not clear if there are asymptomatic infections and whether vaccinated people can unknowingly spread the disease. Moderna says key secondary endpoints of its clinical trial are to see if the vaccine prevents severe disease. The company did say that all 11 of its volunteers who got severe COVID-19 were in the placebo group, suggesting that it does prevents infection, including asymptomatic infection. The Moderna data is not complete, and the final data has not been peer-reviewed or published for either study. Watch why infectious disease experts are encouraged cautious about Pfizer vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer say they will submit the data to a scientific peer review publication once they're complete. How well do the vaccines need to work to be approved? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has said a vaccine must be at least 50% effective to be approved, ideally for preventing the disease but possibly for only preventing severe disease. The World Health Organization recommends that, at minimum, it wants a clear demonstration that the vaccine is effective at least 50% of the time in preventing the disease, preventing severe disease or preventing shedding or transmission. However, it says it prefers vaccines to have at least 70% efficacy across the whole population, with consistent results in the elderly. WHO also said the vaccine must confer protection for at least 6 months and ideally at least 1 year. What kind of trials were these? How far along were they? These were Phase 3 clinical trials, the final human trial step before regulatory approval. While Phase 1 and Phase 2 studies are focused mainly on safety, dosing and lab indicators of an immune response, Phase 3 trials answer a key question: are those who get the vaccine protected from the disease compared to those who get a placebo? It could also reveal rare side effects that aren't observed in smaller Phase 1 and 2 trials. Watch. Optimism about Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Both trials started on July 27. Pfizer's study enrolled more than 43,000 people in the United States, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, South Africa and Turkey. Moderna's study enrolled 30,000 in the US. In both studies, each person gets 2 shots, 28 days apart. Some get the real vaccine candidate, while the others get a placebo. The Phase 3 trials will end when at least half the participants have been tracked for side effects for at least 2 months. Pfizer records 164 infections and Moderna records 151. Moderna has 56 left to go. Pfizer said it had met both those requirements as of November 18. CBC What kind of side effects did volunteers experience? Pfizer said no serious vaccine side effects have been reported, with the most common problem being fatigue after the second vaccine dose, affecting about 4% of participants. Older adults tended to report fewer and milder side effects after vaccination, Pfizer said. Watch. An epidemiologist shares his take on Moderna's promising results. Moderna said most side effects in its trial were mild or moderate, but less than 10% of volunteers had more severe side effects. They included pain at the injection site after the first injection and sometimes fatigue, muscle aches, joint pain, headache and pain or redness at the injection site after the second injection. The doses used in the Phase 3 clinical trial are lower than those linked to severe systemic side effects in 3 participants in an earlier clinical trial. Moderna's vaccine has a higher dose, 100 micrograms, compared to Pfizer's, which uses 30 micrograms. What about long-term effects? Both trials started so recently that it's impossible to know if there are any. However, before approval can be sought for the vaccines, half of the volunteers must be followed for a minimum of 2 months, as most side effects show up.
Wow, that's basically what I wanted to know. So 100 micrograms in the Moderna vaccine. And here we can look at the adverse events from the vaccine by Moderna. And where did I read about shortness of breath? Moderna, chills, fevers, headaches, shortness of breath, pain in the arm. That's listed on observer.com. I don't see it here in the side effects, adverse reactions overview. On ScienceRely.it. Science by ScienceRely. Perhaps it's under any systemic symptom or any local symptom. And some people think this is a war on oxygen, Joe Imbriano. However, I think there could also be controlled opposition, Piers Corbyn as well. What evidence do they have that there is no virus? Independent Co-UK lists that it was isolated in China and in Canada. So even if it wasn't isolated, it doesn't prove beyond any reasonable doubt that there is no virus either. So I wonder, why are they so convinced? They can always Skype Prologic 999 if they'd like to explain it. I'd be honored. Skype Prologic 999. Okay. Because if there is a virus, it gets people's channels removed and the videos, and controlled opposition has reached its goal, basically, taking out any real resistance to the population reducers.
Within that time period, Pfizer says the volunteers will continue to be monitored for long-term protection and safety for 2 years after their second dose. How were the trial participants infected or exposed with COVID-19? They would have been infected in the community while going about their daily activities, such as work, school and social gatherings. Because of that, most
with taking out, I basically mean reducing the amount of influence on our timeline, on our future. Taking them out or getting them removed from YouTube, which may be the best platform if the amount of viewers is important, then I think YouTube may be the best streaming platform still.
Vaccine trials choose countries with a high rate of infection to accumulate enough infections and data more quickly. How big a deal is this? How optimistic should we be? Infectious disease experts say the results are promising. It looks as if both these vaccines are going to work, and very likely both these vaccines are going to be rolling out early 2021. Dr. Chris, what about long-term effects? Both trials started so.
So I'm reading this part again because I wasn't listening closely.
What about long-term effects? Both trials started so recently that it's impossible to know if there are any. However, before approval can be sought for the vaccines, half of the volunteers must be followed for a minimum of 2 months, as most side effects show up within that time period. Pfizer says the volunteers will continue to be monitored for long-term protection and safety.
So basically, they admit it. Both trials started so recently that it's impossible to know if there are any long-term effects.
For 2 years after their second dose, how were the trial participants infected or exposed with COVID-19? They would have been infected in the community while going about their daily activities, such as work, school and social gatherings. Because of that, most vaccine trials choose countries with a high rate of infection to accumulate enough infections and data more quickly. How big a deal is this? How optimistic should we be? Infectious disease experts say the results are promising. It looks as if both these vaccines are going to work, and very likely both these vaccines are going to be rolling out early 2021. Dr. Christopher Labos, a Montreal-based epidemiologist, told CBC News Network after Moderna's announcement. Dr. Bruce Aylward, WHO's senior advisor, said following the Pfizer announcement that the vaccine could fundamentally change the direction of this crisis by March, when the UN agency hopes to start vaccinating high-risk groups. Vaccines won't be available immediately for the general public in Canada. Dr. Carolyn Quach, a pediatric infectious disease physician and medical microbiologist at St. Augustine Hospital in Montreal, cautioned we're not out of the woods yet, and everyone still needs to practice safety measures, such as hand washing, staying home when sick, physical distancing and wearing non-medical masks. That's because independent experts haven't yet seen the full data to determine if the clinical trial participants who received the vaccine and placebo were similar enough to draw conclusions. Experts also cautioned that the rollout of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to the general public will be slow, and logistical hurdles remain, such as the extremely cold temperature requirements for its genetic component. Moderna has said its vaccine is stable at fridge temperatures for a month and regular freezer temperatures are cold enough for long-term storage. Shagla said even if the vaccine is safe and available, even a small number of initial doses dribbles out to the highest risk populations in Canada, such as those over the age of 70 living in long-term care. It could help. Authorizing the vaccine for populations such as children and pregnant women will take longer. Only Pfizer has started vaccinating volunteers under the age of 18 in its trials. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson have said they hope to start testing the vaccine in younger patients soon. What type of vaccine is this? What other frontrunners are similar? Both Moderna's and Pfizer's candidates are messenger RNA vaccines. Pfizer's is officially called BNT162b2 and Moderna's is known as Myrna 1273. The vaccines consist of genetic instructions on how to make the modified spike protein from SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. The genes are encoded in mRNA and packaged in lipid nanoparticles. Once the vaccine is injected into the body, human cells use the instructions to make copies of the spike protein for the immune system to learn to recognize. Pfizer's technology includes Vancouver-based Acutus Therapeutics' lipid nanoparticles to deliver the mRNA after it's injected into our cells. Two other mRNA vaccines, CureVac and Arcturus Therapeutics/Dukenes's candidates, are in phase 2. Canada also has a homegrown mRNA vaccine candidate that is currently in preclinical evaluation from Toronto-based Providence Therapeutics. CBC. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this type of vaccine? This type of vaccine does not contain any virus or viral proteins, which means it can't cause a real infection and is considered safer. It is also relatively quick to manufacture. Alan Bernstein, a trained virologist and a member of Canada's COVID-19 vaccine task force, called the Pfizer announcement great results for humanity. There's never been a vaccine made from RNA, so this is opening up a whole new world of making vaccines if this result holds up, said Bernstein, who previously led a major HIV vaccine effort. However, the mRNA vaccine is a novel technology, and no vaccines of this type have been approved for widespread human use. One disadvantage of mRNA is that it's not very stable. That means it needs to be stored at very cold temperatures. BioNTech's CEO says the vaccine needs to be kept at -70°C for longer-term storage, although the company says it can survive 5 days in a refrigerator. That may make it logistically difficult to distribute, especially in less developed countries. Moderna says its vaccine can survive a month in the fridge and can be stored for months at regular freezer temperatures of -20°C. WHO recommends that vaccines have a shelf life of at least 2 weeks in the fridge and at least 6 to 12 months at temperatures as low as -70°C. However, in the long term, it says vaccines should be able to be stored at -20°C. Do the proposed vaccines deal with live viruses or dead ones to stimulate antibody production? No, not these two particular ones. However, there are some other teams around the world developing COVID-19 vaccines that use live, weakened live coronaviruses, dead or inactivated coronaviruses or live viruses such as the adenovirus cold virus that act as carriers for coronavirus genes. How long would people be protected by these vaccines? That's not known. BioNTech CEO Ugur Sahin has said he expected the immune response from the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to last for at least 1 year, but he did not explain why he thought that. How effective would it be for someone who is taking immunosuppressants? That isn't known. While both studies included people at high risk of the severe complications of COVID-19 disease.
So then that would be another reason, obviously, to keep vaccination voluntary, because they do not know how long people would be protected by these vaccines. And again, the cure can be much, much worse than the disease in this case. We've seen influenza has killed a lot more people in COVID-19. The 1918 alleged Spanish flu killed 50 to 100 million people, and we're now at 1.5 million people. I can visit worldometers.info to get the official number, but less than 2 million, and that means at least 25 times more deaths from influenza than from COVID-19 during the 1918 pandemic.
Such as adults over 65 and younger adults with conditions such as diabetes, severe obesity and cardiac disease. They didn't specifically mention people taking immunosuppressants. However, Moderna did say that preliminary analysis suggests a broadly consistent safety and efficacy profile across all evaluated subgroups. What if we are allergic to flu vaccines or eggs? Can we take this one? Yes. Egg allergies are typically a concern with vaccines that are made in eggs. This one is not made in any live organism. How much has Canada ordered? Canada announced on August 5 that it had pre-ordered both the Moderna and the Pfizer BioNTech vaccines. It later specified that it had reserved 20 million doses of each, with the option to purchase more. In the case of the Moderna vaccine, the agreement specifies that the federal government has the option to purchase another 36 million doses. Because 2 doses are required, Canada would initially have enough to vaccinate 10 million people with each vaccine if they are approved.
So, of course, it's clear the medical cartel can make more money from 2 vaccines than from 1. And free basically means paid with your taxpayer money.
When will Canada get a vaccine? Both Moderna's and Pfizer's vaccines are slated for delivery to Canadians sometime in 2021 if they are approved. Besides those 2, Canada has also pre-ordered vaccines from several other companies. Dr. Howard Nju, Canada's Deputy Chief Public Health Officer, said on Tuesday that he expects all Canadians to be vaccinated against COVID-19 by the end of next year. How much can Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna manufacture? Pfizer, BioNTech say they can produce up to 50 million vaccine doses in 2020 and up to 1.3 billion doses in 2021. Besides Canada, they have already received pre-orders from other countries. For the Pfizer vaccine, the US has pre-ordered the first 100 million doses, with option to add another 500 million. Pfizer and BioNTech say they can deliver 50 million of those doses by year-end. The United Kingdom has ordered 30 million. The companies also have an agreement with the European Union for 200 million doses. Moderna expects to have about 20 million doses, earmarked for the US by the end of 2020. The US has ordered a total of 100 million doses, with the option to acquire more. Moderna has also signed deals with Israel and Switzerland. Both Moderna and Pfizer, BioNTech plan to ask the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for emergency use authorization of their vaccines once the trials are complete and the safety data analyzed. Have a question? Send your questions about this and other COVID-19 vaccine candidates to covid@cbc.ca.
So I want to keep clear that I'm not claiming that Piers Corbyn and Joe Embriano, Fullerton Informer, are or are not controlled opposition. And I'm not claiming that there is or is no virus. I have no sufficient data for this. So I cannot prove to myself that there is or isn't one, but these 3 things make it pretty likely that it is a virus, and probably a designer virus. For example, the electron micrographs, microscope images of the virus. Now the Independent and other articles in which they claim that it has been isolated. So some claim they've received letters that they have no virus material for tests, etc. And The other thing is the nextstrain.org, I think, website, or nextstrain.com. I can check it here. That shows all these mutations, clades, and then they claim that there are not that many, etc. Global. Okay, this one takes a while to load. So in the meantime, I also wanted to show worldometers.info to see the current developments according to the official numbers of the WHO and CDC. Let's see if there are still more HIV virus deaths than SARS-CoV-2 virus deaths. 1.55 million deaths caused by HIV/AIDS this year. And it has to load 1.50, so 1,502,714 deaths due to COVID-19 thus far worldwide, according to worldometers.info official numbers. So there are still more HIV virus deaths than COVID-19 deaths. To put things in perspective, basically, which I think is what they're not doing. They're looking at the amount of cases much more frequently than the number of deaths, the amount of deaths worldwide. And shocking 7.6 million deaths caused by cancer this year. In comparison, and cannabis kills tumors by blocking VEGF, that's scientifically proven. So people can Google or DuckDuckGo that if they want to use an anonymous search engine. So there are more 1,554,833 deaths caused by HIV/AIDS this year. So that's about 1.55 and 1.50 million deaths due to COVID-19, according to worldometers. Daily new cases and daily deaths worldwide. And it seems like from about here that there are more gaps in these daily deaths. USA has the highest number of cases, 14,318,268. And basically I would look at deaths per million population if it's about safety, put things in perspective, about saving lives. Because if it's very contagious but nobody dies from it, then all these measures are absurd, basically, unconstitutional, and even a threat to humanity. And what most people leave out is that the measures will also cause deaths, not just the virus pandemic. For example, 1.4 million extra tuberculosis deaths. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So many people think that these are disproportionate measures that will do more harm than good. Even Nobel Prize winners and professors, real scientists, not the pseudo-scientists that are making money from this, that are pushing it. Follow the money is another slogan that I've heard via YouTube. So San Marino is now second qua deaths per million population, though they have been in first place for a long time. Only recently they were superseded, or how do I say it, by Belgium. Belgium has now more deaths per million population than San Marino, the first country to roll out 5G. We also see Spain and Italy, UK, number 7. So all these countries have more deaths per million population than Sweden, where these measures, the social distancing rule was voluntary. Sweden is in number 24, though Sweden is pretty close to these other European countries. And as a matter of fact, the US has 485 times more cases per million population than China, and the US has 285 times more deaths per million population than China. So my question is still, how is that possible if they supposedly have the best healthcare in the world, etc., based on a Trump statement? And I think both deep state Jesuit coadjutors, both Biden and Trump, so that it doesn't matter, that they both make it mandatory, that both roll out 5G, and they both help with population reduction agenda. Though Joe Biden has spoken out in favor of a New World Order, that's more hidden with Trump, but I think he may also be Knight of Malta, Freemason. And at that, what I call the Jesuit dinner table, he also spoke about globalism. I'm not going to play that video now, so let's see what we can do next. I want to read this one. It's pretty exciting. Out of Mind. What topics? I don't know if this is originally from another website, perhaps humansareFree.com, and it can be controlled position, so there can be lies that can be used to remove our channel, etc. in theory. And I could be controlled position as well. And indicators can be the amount of viewers and a number of other things. I can give the definition of controlled position, Urban Dictionary. A controlled position is a protest movement that is actually being led by government agents. Nearly all governments in history have employed this technique to trick and subdue their adversaries. Notably, Vladimir Lenin, who said, quote, "The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves," unquote. Count Mirabeau was part of the controlled opposition because although everyone thought he was supporting the revolution, in reality he supported the monarchy and was a personal friend of the king. He was a government agent. Quote, it's on urbandictionary.com. But you could argue there are different types of controlled opposition, and any opposition to a political party or person could be considered controlled opposition, because synthetic telepathy has been around since 1974. So it can be fake resistance to round up any real resistance, basically.
Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. Go down message. Page 1 of 11. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. Empty. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. On for July 17, 2029, 52 a.m. Purple Skies admin posts, 97,325 join date, January 4, 2012 location, Woodstock Nation. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3
So that's 5 times. Hopefully it will also start reading the article now.
months, rendering the vaccine pointless. Alexander 64 by 64 half July 17, 2020. The widely hyped Moderna coronavirus vaccine caused adverse events, side effects, in over 50% of clinical trial participants, including fatigue, chills, headache, myalgia, and pain at the injection site. By Mike Adams. While it generates antibodies in the short term, new studies indicate those antibodies fade very quickly, rendering the vaccine pointless in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. The side effects of the Moderna mRNA vaccine are documented in a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, a discredited, pro-pharma junk science rag that lies in favor of big pharma in every way possible. Enlarge this image. Click to see full size. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. E1594975189678. As published on medicine.news. The NEJM was recently caught up with The Lancet in a junk science scheme that sought to discredit hydroxychloroquine through the use of fabricated data that was published in both journals, then was later retracted. The new study is entitled, An mRNA Vaccine Against SARS-CoV-2, Preliminary Report. It details the astonishing degree of side effects experienced by study subjects, revealing that over half of study participants reported at least one side effect. This chart, from the study, also shows that the side effects are dose-dependent, meaning the higher the injection dose, the higher the reported side effects, further strengthening the causal ties between the vaccine and the side effects. Moderna COVID-19 vaccine causes side effects in over 50% of patients. Antibodies disappear in 2-3 months, rendering the vaccine pointless. 100 of study participants experienced side effects. As you can see from the chart, 100% of study participants experienced side effects at the 100 micrograms or 250 micrograms injection volumes. During the second round of vaccination, 100% of study participants experienced side effects in the high-dose second round of vaccination. Notably, 100% of participants experienced headaches, local symptoms and systemic symptoms, while nearly 100% experienced chills, myalgia and fatigue. During the second injections, this study reveals that the vaccine becomes increasingly toxic with subsequent injections, meaning even if the first injection is relatively well handled by the body, the second injection can be significantly more dangerous. Notably, with other studies now revealing that coronavirus antibodies fade quickly over the period of about 3 months, the mRNA vaccine from Moderna would have to be injected multiple times, perhaps as many as 4 times each year in order to maintain high levels of antibodies. But with each injection, the vaccine becomes more toxic and produces more side effects. As the study authors conclude, systemic adverse events were more common after the second vaccination, particularly with the highest dose. Even with side effects impacting all participants in the second round, study authors claim everything's fine yet, to no one's surprise, all these toxic effects of the vaccine that increase with subsequent vaccines are not called out as an item of concern. Given that the study authors are, of course, paid by Moderna to produce pro-vaccine propaganda in the name of science, they conclude that all the side effects are perfectly fine, stating, emphasis added across both vaccinations, solicited systemic and local adverse events that occurred in more than half the participants included fatigue, chills, headache, myalgia, and pain at the injection site. Evaluation of safety. Clinical laboratory values of grade 2 or higher and unsolicited adverse events revealed no patterns of concern. These safety and immunogenicity findings support advancement of the Moderna 1273 vaccine to later stage clinical trials. Got that? The vaccine is increasingly toxic in higher doses and multiple injections, but it's still awesome and should move toward production and widespread injections into potentially billions of human beings, despite no long-term safety studies being conducted whatsoever. That's the vaccine industry in 2020. Screw safety and science, just approve the damn thing and collect the hundreds of billions of dollars from governments buying your vaccine, even if it harms or kills millions of people, even when the vaccine invokes an antibody response. That's not immunity. Note that the production of antibodies in the blood is not the same as functional immunity. There is zero evidence that this vaccine makes anyone immune to coronavirus infections. And as Michael Snyder writes on endoftheamericandream.com, 3 studies have now found COVID-19 antibodies disappear from the body very quickly, rendering antibody-producing vaccines practically worthless. Scientific evidence continues to emerge that indicates that COVID-19 is going to be with us for a very long time to come. Yesterday, I reported on a recent study that was conducted in China and another recent study that was conducted in Spain that both shows that COVID-19 antibodies start to disappear very, very quickly. In fact, the study that was conducted in Spain discovered that some patients that originally tested positive for antibodies no longer had antibodies weeks later. Well, now we have a third study to add to the list, a study of COVID-19 patients that was conducted at Guy's and St Thomas National Health Service Foundation Trust in London found that just 16.7% of the patients had a potent antibody response after a couple of months had passed. Researchers analyzed immune responses of patients and healthcare workers at Guy's and St Thomas National Health Service Foundation Trust in London and found that levels of antibodies that destroy the virus quickly declined after peaking several weeks after patients exhibited symptoms. The study found that 60% of the patients had a potent antibody response at peak of their battle with the coronavirus. After about 2 months, however, just 16.7% of the patients had a potent antibody response. As Snyder points out, this is a huge finding because it means that coronavirus vaccines will likely only work short-term. After perhaps 90 days or so, the vaccine wears off and the antibodies are no longer functional in the body. Even the presence of antibodies doesn't automatically confer immunity. By the way, again, from Snyder, in addition, experts are telling us that even if a COVID-19 victim develops antibodies, that does not necessarily mean that individual has immunity. In an article that he authored for CNN, Dr. William Hasseltine explained that only 15% of those who test positive for antibodies make the neutralizing antibodies necessary to develop immunity. Not only do antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 fade, and perhaps fade quickly, studies have also shown that only 15% of those who test positive for antibodies make the neutralizing antibodies necessary to develop immunity in the first place. And not all of those who make neutralizing antibodies make them at high levels. Some of those infected make no antibodies at all. In other words, even if the mRNA vaccine from Moderna produces antibodies, the whole exercise may be pointless for 2 reasons. 1. Antibodies alone don't confer immunity. 2. Antibodies fade away in just a few weeks. Thus, the Moderna vaccine, which the big pharma pimping mainstream media has been hyping up as the savior of humanity, is probably a massive medical hoax that will scam world governments out of hundreds of billions of dollars for a treatment that flat out doesn't work. Worse than a hoax, this vaccine will clearly harm large numbers of people, given that 100% of study subjects are already experiencing adverse events in the high-dose group, during the second round of injections. How toxic is this going to get during a third vaccine? Or a fourth? And is there any end to how many injections of the same vaccine will be mandated by a corrupt, criminal FDA, CDC and national media that makes all its editorial decisions based on the profit demands of the drug cartels? Finally, keep in mind that globalists who also promote the depopulation agenda are demanding this vaccine be given to black people first. So wait, take a toxic vaccine that doesn't work but that causes huge side effects, and line up all the blacks to be human guinea pigs? Sounds like globalists and the vaccine industry have a whole new plan for planet Earth beyond 2020, and it has nothing to do with halting the pandemic but everything to do with genocide. Don't you find it astonishing that while hundreds of US corporations are lining up to claim Black Lives Matter, Many of those very same corporations are the ones producing the vaccines that will no doubt destroy Black lives, thanks to https://humansafree.com.
So the other illustration is coming up again, showing the spike in the number of deaths from all causes. This one is from Questions for Lockdown Apologists, the article. So that's a chart from the Financial Times, showing overall mortality and quote deaths in excess of normal levels, quote, in 2020 for a number of countries. And then they've added the lockdown dates in green for each country, the date when the lockdown measures were introduced by mainstream media and such. So we see in most of these countries the number of deaths from all causes is going down until the lockdown measures are introduced, and then we see that spike in the number of deaths from all causes. Could that be due to a placebo, nocebo effect, or reversed placebo effect is the question. Or how is it possible that always immediately after these measures are introduced there's a spike in the number of deaths from all causes? I can add that link in the description also. Yeah, pretty interesting overview. And then we can read the other one that's also about the adverse reactions in more than half of trial participants of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Caused by it, or at least after injection. So let's read this then. This is on justthenews.com.
Moderna COVID-19 vaccine induced adverse reactions in more than half of trial participants. 1/5 of participants in one test group reported one or more severe adverse events. 002 by Daniel Payne, updated July 15, 2020 to 12:24 p.m. Article. An early anticipated clinical trial for a potential COVID-19 vaccine managed in part by the American drug company Moderna has resulted in some adverse effects in more than half of the trial's participants, with one test group reporting severe symptoms.
And mind you, this is not even the 7 billion Bill Gates vaccine with the gene drive extinction techno in it. So ban CRISPR-Cas9 gene drive technology.
The trial, which is also being sponsored by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, administered the vaccine as a 0.5 milliliter injection in the deltoid muscle in 2 shots spaced about 1 month apart. 2 separate groups received 25 microgram and 100 microgram doses, respectively. A third group with a 250 microgram dose was subsequently added. The vaccine induced anti-SARS-CoV-2 immune responses in all participants, the research team reported Tuesday in the New England Journal of Medicine. Researchers said that no trial-limiting safety concerns were identified, yet a majority of participants still reported at least one side effect. Solicited adverse events that occurred in more than half the participants included fatigue, chills, headache, myalgia, and pain at the injection site. The report states, fever, joint pain and nausea were also reported. Side effects grew more common with more, and larger, injections. The scientists write, Systemic adverse events were more common after the second vaccination, particularly with the highest dose, and 3 participants, 21%, in the 250-gram dose group reported 1 or more severe adverse events. Notably, every participant in the 2 larger dose groups reported adverse reactions after their second injections. One study participant in the smallest dose group, meanwhile, was removed due to having developed hives after the first round of injections. The scientists said that due to the ongoing status of the project, they are not yet able to assess the durability of the immune responses generated by the vaccine, but that they intend to follow participants for 1 year after the second vaccination and examine regular blood samples to monitor the vaccine's effects. A large trial expected to evaluate a 100-gram dose is anticipated to begin during the summer of 2020, the report states. Related articles.
So even if all the ingredients are listed, that doesn't mean that the vaccine cannot be contaminated. So there can be things in there that are not listed, as we've seen in the past. And of course, it is even possible that everybody that gets the vaccine will die from it eventually, after 2 or 3 years, because they've never tested the long-term effects. Okay, so then we can move to the next article. Observer.com, I checked this one already, of course. Let's see if there's anything else that I should read now. This is 10news.com, ABC 10 News San Diego.
What are the side effects of the Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccines? Fatigue and aches most common in Phase 3 studies. Early data suggests the coronavirus vaccine candidates from both Pfizer and Moderna are safe and effective, but some patients may experience side effects that can feel intense but resolve quickly. Vaccine trial by Derek Stowe posted at 5:36 p.m., November 19, 2020 and last updated 2:52 a.m., November 20, 2020 San Diego, KGTV. Early data suggests the coronavirus vaccine candidates from both Pfizer and Moderna are safe and effective, but some patients may experience side effects that can feel intense but resolve quickly. More than 37,000 people have taken either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine in a Phase 3 trial. Both vaccines require 2 doses, and side effects were more common after the second dose. Recent stories from 10news.com. Pfizer reported 3.8% of the recipients felt fatigue and 2% experienced headache, based on preliminary data from its Phase 3 trial. These symptoms are classified as grade 3 or severe adverse events because they can interfere with daily activity. Moderna reported more grade 3 side effects. There was fatigue in 9.7% of recipients, muscle pain in 8.9%, joint pain in 5.2%, headache in 4.5%, pain in 4.1%, and redness at the injection site in 2%. Neither company reported side effects that affected less than 2% of participants in their press releases, but more detailed data will be released. Dr. Peter Chin-Hong, an infectious disease specialist at UC San Francisco, said the symptoms typically appear in the first few hours after vaccination and resolve within 24 to 36 hours. The most troublesome of them for people has been low-grade temperatures, but they go away in many cases without even using anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, he said. Experts say that vaccines appear to have a higher rate of grade 3 side effects than the typical flu vaccine, even high-dose flu vaccines, but they say there's no reason to worry about so-called reactogenic symptoms like muscle and joint pain. Usually if it hurts, that's a positive sign. That's your immune system actually responding to the immunization so that it's going to be able to fight off the virus in the future, said Dr. Shane Crotty, a virologist at the La Jolla Institute for Immunology. Both leading COVID-19 vaccines rely on the same platform, Messenger RNA. This technique has never been used in an approved vaccine before. There is no evidence yet of any long-term side effects, but they can't be ruled out either. The fragility of mRNA makes it unlikely to linger in the body, but any vaccine could theoretically cause disruptions in the immune system, experts said. The FDA required vaccine makers to follow vaccine recipients for a median of 2 months after the second dose before seeking approval to detect longer-term side effects. I think that's a pretty good window to see a bad side effect like Guillain-Barré, said Dr. Christian Ramers of Family Health Centers of San Diego. It really should show up within those 2 months after the second shot. Guillain-Barré syndrome can cause paralysis, and some flu vaccines have been associated with increased rates of it. But the increased rates are still extremely rare.
Guillain-Barré. Is that next to the Epstein-Barr or something? Guillain-Barré.
An extra 1 to 2 cases for every million doses, according to the CDC. Dr. Ramers said the long-term consequences of contracting COVID-19 are much more concerning. This is not a virus that you want to get, he said. There are unpredictable effects. There are healthy young people developing clots and strokes. A study on COVID-19 patients in Michigan found that 2 months after hospitalization, 32.5% had a lingering cough or difficulty breathing, and 11% reported new or worsening trouble caring for themselves. Both the FDA and the CDC are taking extra steps to monitor people who get the vaccine early for any side effects. The CDC plans to monitor recipients' health via text message for several weeks, including 1 or more texts per day during the first week.
The CDC did it. Alright, well, we can check if there are any other interesting articles. Let's see if anybody wrote anything in the chat, if you know any good links. Hi again, how are you? Gamoriana, Rose, welcome. Gen News, doing alright. If you know any good articles, please post the links. Let's see. Oh yeah, the RNA wiki article. Well, I've covered what I think is important for this broadcast already, and then we had nextstrain.org showing all these clades, these mutations of the virus. So let's read this whole RNA vaccine wiki article intro.
An RNA vaccine or mRNA, messenger RNA, vaccine is a new type of vaccine that transfers molecules of synthetic RNA into human cells. Once inside the cells, the RNA functions as mRNA, reprogramming the cells to make the foreign protein that would normally be produced by the pathogen, for example a virus, or by cancer cells. These protein molecules then stimulate an adaptive immune response that teaches the body to destroy any pathogen, or cancer cells, with the protein. 1. The mRNA molecule is coated with a drug delivery vehicle, usually PE-gylated lipid nanoparticles, to protect the fragile mRNA strands, and aid their absorption into the human cells. 2-3. The advantages of RNA vaccines over traditional protein vaccines include production speed and low cost of production, 4-5, and the induction of cellular immunity as well as humoral immunity. 6-7, given the novel nature of the mechanism of action of RNA vaccines, and their delivery systems, little is known about the medium and longer-term side effects. 7, however, autoimmunity, and reactogenicity, mainly from the lipid nanoparticles, have been highlighted. 5-8-9, the fragility of the mRNA molecule requires cold chain distribution and storage, which may impair effective efficacy due to inadequate dosage. IDOT molecule degrades before injection. 1-4-5. Up until December 2020, no mRNA vaccine, drug, or technology platform had ever been approved for use in humans, and before 2020, mRNA was only considered a theoretical or experimental candidate for use in humans. 169. As of December 2020, there were 2 novel mRNA vaccines awaiting emergency use authorization as COVID-19 vaccines, having completed the required 8-week period post-final human trials, mRNA 1273 from Moderna, and BNT162b2 from a BioNTech, Pfizer partnership. 19. Global regulators had to balance a lack of medium to longer term data on potential side effects from the novel mechanism of the new mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, 10.8, with the urgent need to address the global coronavirus pandemic, 9/11, for which the faster production capability of mRNA vaccines is valuable. 12.13.8. On December 2, 2020, 7 days after its 8-week post-trial period, the UK's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, became the first medicines regulator in history to approve an mRNA vaccine, granting emergency authorization for BioNTech/Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for widespread use, 14.15, stating that the benefits outweigh any risk.
Okay then, I think that's it for now, for this broadcast. I'm gonna work on getting my wiki dark to work again. There was something with updating an add-on, and then after updating it, then that message kept on appearing basically. I think that may have been a dark mode add-on, so that was weird. Anyway, perhaps I can make some more important broadcasts to change this timeline into what it ought to be. All of this can also be related to the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, Build Back Better, BBB, with small b's equals 666 basically. Demolishing homes under the guise of COVID-19 contamination. Of course, they claim it's about rebuilding the system better, but this, of course, during a pandemic crisis, it's the worst moment to look at the possibilities, and they shouldn't do it unless they can control the outcome. Plus, the people haven't voted about this in a referendum or in any way. It's not something that the people... It's basically undemocratic, all these things. Some would compare it to the Nazi measures, dictatorialism, but especially the dictatorialism. So that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Do healing stuff, check my previous broadcasts to curb the spread. Next to the WHO guidelines, there are 4 effective measures that I've covered. Links are in the description. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe my videos. This channel must grow to be the influence on the timeline that the human race needs to create a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally. Breathing is also important. Yeah, people can always use DuckDuckGo to search the info that they need, ask any question. People can become super smart and educated using DuckDuckGo and the internet. After the ducks, the Homo universalis. So, kiss for single ladies who would like one. And see you all next time on Genuine News. My name is Ulrich Hoffman. You can always Skype me, Prologic999. May peace be with you all.